Probably a year ago, we were asking you for your running back rotation to explain it. The more things change, the more they stay the same. How do you expect to deploy your running backs?
Did I answer it a year ago?
I
don't remember. No, I think, I know I've talked to you guys a couple times since, throughout training camp and on into, knowing who was going to be on our 53-man roster. I think what makes that group, a real positive for us right now is the fact that we feel like we've got three guys, with similar skill sets that are versatile, can help us in the pass game, can help us in protection, but also when it's time to pound the rock and get downhill and run behind their pads, they can do that. So I think it's really, truly a matter of, Daryl, we feel really great about where Daryl's at and really have since the beginning of training camp. And then to add Sony to go along with Jake and really the way he's grown since he's gotten here as a rookie. And then obviously Sony, Coach Thomas Brown's done a tremendous job getting him up to speed and ready to go. Obviously his experience is really, proving to be a positive to kind of figuring out where he does fit. And to be quite honest, we're still figuring that out as we go. But I think the versatility allows us to, not only play to the hot hand, but rely on all three of those guys in different phases, starting out with Daryl and his ability to be, what we think is a feature back. But at the same time, you feel good about those other two guys as well.
Seeing if you guys traded for Matthew Stafford, shortly after the season ended last year, does it seem like he's been around for a long time before he's playing his first game, or is the time kind of flown by?
It does. We spent a lot of time together since the trade, happened, and obviously both just getting to know each other personally and getting, the trust you build and the relationship you build as a coach with, really, I work really closely with the quarterbacks, obviously. It's really important to me, having been in a quarterback room as a player and, been a part of running a few as a coach now. There's nothing more important than that trust and relationship to where you can coach guys hard. They feel like they can give you feedback and real feedback on not only how you're coaching them, but how their fit in the offense is. And obviously for, where we want to go with Matthew, it's really important for not only for him to be able to share his thoughts with the head coach and the play caller and Sean, but myself. And I can kind of be a direct between those two guys. And I see game day being the same way, and I see just a continued growth throughout the season. But it does feel like, just the amount of work he's put in and being side by side with him for that and the other quarterbacks, it does feel like he's been here a long time.
It might seem kind of obvious, but what do you expect to see from him on Sunday?
I expect him to be that same steady force that he's always been as a starting quarterback since day one in this league. And he's got a lot of experience to really call upon, but at the same time, it's going to be his first opportunity running out as our guy. And I think there's not one guy in the locker room that's not excited about seeing him do that and lead us. There's a reason why, he's going to have one of those gold C's on his jersey. I think you got to be at least a 5-time captain, and he did that a long time ago. So all his teammates view him as our leader on the offensive side, among other guys that obviously have those qualities. But there's an excitement level about having him, going into that huddle to start the game out on Sunday night.
What is he like when he's specifically solving a problem?
Unbelievable communicator. I think we've seen it firsthand as an offensive unit, fixing problems, but also just the way he asks questions, the way he observes, the way a receiver runs a route or how we pick up a pressure or, maybe what we're doing in the run game from a standpoint of how we're targeting something. Unbelievable way of communicating without ever seeming, dismissive or attacking, and it's always in such a way that embraces and brings people closer to him. Something that is one of the main traits that, having been around him and learned about him, I'm probably most impressed by is that, leadership quality of somehow getting the best out of his teammates without ever, making any of them feel like attacked or, it's an unbelievable quality to have as a person, but you feel really much at a maximum when you're talking about the quarterback of your offense.
When you're talking about this weekend's game, when you look at the Bears defense with guys like Smith, Nichols, and Ogletree, what is the greatest challenge this offense will face? What do you think of their defensive coordinator, Sean? side?
Yeah, well, you mentioned some names right there that are all big time players defensive in this league and have been for a long time. One name I didn't hear was Khalil Mack, and that's obviously, he's a guy, 32 teams around the league would love to have him as their elite pass rusher. And obviously Quinn on the other edge, they cause so many problems to go along with those guys inside. Hicks and Nichols and Goldman and these names that are guys that have been doing it a long time and playing to a certain standard for that Bears defense. And the guys on the back end, obviously both those safeties, Eddie Jackson and Gibson there. I've been around him when I was coaching in Cleveland. I think the world of both those guys, playing the safety position. Super physical, competitive, talented corners, and then obviously linebackers, and you mentioned Roquan Smith, and I think Trevathan's going to be hurt, but we all know Alex Ogletree very well around here, and you're mentioning names of guys that are really special players in this league from a standpoint of put a lot of good stuff on tape for a long time. So we've got nothing but respect for the players over there, but schematically you can even see in the preseason how they're activating some of the things that they want to do, and I know he may be a first-time play caller, but Coach DeSean has clearly put his stamp on that already. You could just tell watching that group, they play hard, and even when they had 90-man roster, you could see first, second, third string guys on that defense. They're playing hard for those coaches, and I think it's a credit to those guys. But it's going to be a heck of a challenge for us. There's no doubt about it. It always is when you play such a physical group over there that, it's their opener. They feel really good about what they're doing, and it's going to be a heck of a challenge.
In the 5 or 6 months since you've worked with Matthew Stafford, obviously the one thing you cannot simulate is game speed and the timing associated with that. For a first quarterback in this system,
Yep.
any concerns? What concerns there?
Well, there normally would be in a lot of ways, but one thing I think we've talked a lot about before is just the way we practice against our defense, and you can we just mentioned a lot of Bears defenders just then, but I'm sure they're thinking the same way about our defense, and that's a heck of a challenge every single day to go and play Raheem's guys, Aaron and Jalen. Obviously, the back end, the way they play coverage, the way they challenge us at the quarterback position, but also the physicality, Leonard, obviously Bash up front. You just mentioned guys on our defense in a way where you're just thankful they're on our team, but like you're saying, it does provide us with the ability. Those guys knowing that they're not going to play in the preseason, we practice it at a certain standard that we like to think, defines the way we're preparing for the season. And we'll find out Sunday night. We were able to get a win on Sunday night last year in the absence of preseason games. So I'd like to think that those guys have had a process in place to help them be at their best. Now we just get to go find out.
In the deep dive you've done with Matthew, compared to before he got here, when you knew he was coming, what jumps out at you that he's been able to do that he didn't know?
Well, I the first thing that jumped out was just the pure ability to play the position, make throws, throws on schedule, off schedule, his manipulation of a defense with his feet and eyes, but still playing in rhythm with great ball security. I mean, it's a lot of coach speak, but it just means he's played the position at a really, really high level. So we're excited to get him in for that. But I mentioned some of those traits as a leader, as setting the standard for our group, and really coming into an offense that has had a lot of success, and an offense that has had a certain way of doing things well, in his own way, being a sponge and learning and wanting to be the best possible version of himself within the offense, while also infusing some things that have quite honestly made us better. And I think we get to go out and start seeing some of that on Sunday. But at the same time, it's going to be a process for him. You mentioned already he hasn't played in that full speed action, but I fully expect him to go out there and hit the ground running and lead us. And I'm just excited to see our whole group go out there, and really our whole team, just after the last month and a half or so of work that we've had.
Kevin, what is it like for you personally, just that dynamic of working with a more experienced quarterback? Obviously, you worked with Jared, who was younger before.
Yep.
And even in Washington, Dwayne Haskins. How, if at all, do you change your approach and meet them in the middle, if at all?
Yeah, I think, it's a collaboration, and I think it's important even that it's like that when you're coaching a young quarterback, because the whole thing you're hunting, right, is ownership. And you're hunting it from a standpoint of schematics. You're hunting it from a standpoint of how they, carry themselves in the building to how they run the show out there when coaches can't be out there and we're on the sidelines wearing headsets, and that's all great. But at the end of the day, it's a collaboration, but at the same time, you're fueling whoever it is playing quarterback for you to have ownership, because that's when your offense is at its best. And a quarterback with Matthew's experience, but also those traits that we've talked about, it did not take him long to really fit in here and be a really, really pleasant guy to work with on a daily basis. I mean, you just can't say enough about what it's like coming to work every day, having him leading the charge on offense and being a part of our team as our quarterback.
Hey, Kevin,
A couple more, guys.
a couple random ones for you. Are you still going to be on the field?
Yep.
And what do you prefer about that?
I think it's really important that, to kind of like what we've talked about, there's a lot going on for the head coach on game day, and really to be able to help, make sure as an offense, substitutions, what we may be going with or moving forward with, making sure things are dialed in from a standpoint of when that personnel group or that play gets called, we've done our part in the background to make sure it's coordinated the right way. And then obviously be a direct line, all 4 quarters, every minute of that game for the quarterbacks, and whatever adjustments are being made throughout the offense, throughout the situation of the game. I think it's just so important to be able to just be there talking to those guys and really hearing from them as well. We talk about that collaboration. That's game day as much as anything. And then we got some great guys upstairs, Chris O'Hara, obviously Zach Cromer, Nick Jones, Wes Phillips. I mean, guys that I've personally coached with multiple years, but I know that Coach McVay feels very strongly about their ability to see it up there and convey information down to us.
And then when you were playing quarterback, what were you like in the huddle? What was your stance? How did you? You're tall. Did you try to talk up to guys?
I think the biggest thing is eye contact, and if you really know what you're saying, which I didn't always, but if you really know what you're saying and who you're saying it to, you can look at people individually when you're speaking to them, much like you would do in any conversation. But you could say, X this, F this, Z this, and look at that player and just see it right back that they understand exactly what you're saying. I think that's huge. I thought you were going to ask me a question like somebody asked me last year. You've spent a lot of time on the sidelines. Is that, as a player and coach, is that where you were going with it? I thought that's where you were going. But, yes, I feel very comfortable watching the game from the sideline, as we have established last year.
Kevin, you've got so many weapons in the receiving corps for Matthew to really give the ball to. Are you noticing that he's connecting with one more than another, or what are you seeing?
I think that's been the coolest part is just – you look at it, obviously you're excited for a guy like Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, Robert Woods, DeSean Jackson, veterans. But at the same time, the growth that I've seen from Van Jefferson because of that dialogue with Matthew every day, and really our whole receiving corps, Johnny Munt even, I know I've expressed to you guys how positive we feel about him. But just as a whole, he understands. He's been through it enough to know that we're going to need everybody. And you may need everybody this coming Sunday night to feel like they have a big-time role. And that's the way we'd like to attack people, with everybody feeling like they're, all 5 eligibles are alive. And, it's about all 5 trying to win, but the quarterback's going to make it right in the end.
You and Sean finally have the deep threat stretch of the field receiver that a lot of people thought you needed last year, thought was something that was missing from the Rams. What kind of impact is DeSean going to make on this team from week 1? What do you anticipate and expect?
Yeah, he's put a lot of stuff on tape in his career, really special things going down the field and getting the football. We feel really strongly about him still being able to do that. But at the same time, the cool thing about DeSean is he's coming to an offense where we ask a lot out of our wide receivers from a blocking standpoint, quick game, catching the ball and running yards after catch. And he's proved to fit right in with those other guys. And I think it's a credit to Coach Yarber and Chris O'Hara getting those guys going, but at the same time, the leadership of that room with Cooper and Robert and kind of the standard in their own way, how they've set to play in the position. I think it's been a great mix. And now he's one of those guys that I'm really excited about seeing, at SoFi on Sunday night.
Sean said DeSean
Two more, guys.
DeSean looks physically like the guy he had in Washington 5 years ago. Do you see that speed? Do you see the same guy there now that he's 34?
Absolutely. I learned when I got to Washington, DeSean had just left, but that didn't mean that he wasn't all over the cut-ups when I got there. So I've seen a lot of tape over the years of him and been on sidelines when he's run by our team. So I'm just happy he's on our team and part of our group. And I know I speak for everybody when I say that.
Just a really quick follow-up to the huddle question. Do you think that it changes the conversation dynamic to
Yeah, I think so. I mean, getting and really being in the heart of that huddle, being right in the middle of it. The philosophy on the huddle, how you form it. Talking about that the week of the first game, I like it because whether you're in a circle or you're in rows, whether you huddle at all, I think no matter how you do it, the point is it can be done a lot of ways, but it's the presence and it's the command of the guy calling the shots and running the show that matters the most. Yep.
The experience of working with a veteran quarterback, I mean, more than 10 years in the league, how has that been different for you? What has that added to kind of your toolbox?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of coaching Josh McCown my first year coaching, and then obviously being around Alex Smith, like elite level people and guys that had a lot of success in this league. I call upon those experiences of the interaction with Matthew, but at the same time, it's important not to ever try to be anybody that I'm not as a coach, and I know that's what he values as himself is that, that real sense of self that he operates with that people gravitate towards, and I'd like to feel like I'm the same way as a coach. In the end, you rely on what you believe and what you've been trained by my mentors and people I've been around, but coaching Matthew Stafford allows me to be myself, but also knowing that I'm trying to do everything I can every single day to help put him in a great situation to have success and help him, make it as easy as I can on him throughout the daily process of preparation. But then the ball gets kicked off on Sunday, and it's time for him to go to work. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Guys prepare for the Bears and Andy Dalton. Do you take some of the old tape on Andy? Do you take the offense that the Bears have run in the last couple of years?
Yeah, you obviously got to have a certain amount of respect for their coaching staff. Bill Lazor, a guy I got a lot of respect for. I've been around a long time, and obviously their head coach. They do a great job preparing their quarterbacks to be ready to play. Whether you talk about Andy Dalton, whether you talking about last year with Mitch Trubisky. Obviously this year you got ready for the two quarterback system because of the guys they have in the game and the ability to play those guys in certain situations, even if they're not starting. But you got to have a lot of respect for how they can use those guys and utilize those guys and prepare for all of that and be ready to deal.
A little bit of conversation about Allen Robinson maybe moving around a little bit more than he had in the past. Is that where a player like Jalen Ramsey kind of helps, or some of the versatility of some of your other guys kind of helps?
Yeah, there's no doubt. You talk about Allen Robinson, the premier receiver in this league for a long time. He does some things very, very well. He's a great isolation player. He's a great player in third down. He's been a great player for a long time at two different teams now. And having the luxury of being a player, if you want to look at it that way, he's one of those guys you got to prepare for, and he's going to move around. They're going to try to give him the ball in his hands, particularly in the third down situations, particularly in window situations when you got to have it. And it's nice to have a player like a Jalen Ramsey to be able to have a player on defense that you can match up with him. Not to say that he will follow him around the whole game or anything like that, but there will be times that they'll have matchups. There will be times where he'll be with Darius Williams, and there will be times he'll be on D-Lo. And you've got a lot of confidence in all those guys holding up on their end in the back on the bargain.
Raheem, going back to Andy Dalton, and obviously he's got a lot of experience. Can you describe the challenge of his experience brings, especially with players like David Montgomery and Allen Robinson around him?
You got to love the rifle. He's been doing it for a long time. He's one of those guys that has won a bunch of games. He's one of those guys that played in some productive seasons with Cincinnati. And now he's one of those guys getting his feet back under him and having another opportunity this year and coming to a full board. And he's one of those guys that is going to take every block that he gets, and he's going to build on it. And going through the situation he went through last year, getting injured, having another opportunity, being ready to groom a young quarterback, being ready to come in and being that veteran presence and be able to lead those guys to wins, he'll take advantage of that. He's got some very veteran players around him, but David Montgomery, like you mentioned, who's a very good running back, came into his own last year, particularly late in the season, knocking off a bunch of big runs there. We were fortunate enough to play against him last year and see how good of a player he was. They lost a really good player. I don't know what's Tariq Cohen's status, but you do know those guys playing together was something to deal with. And they had a bunch of guys there last year that you were ready to deal with. And they got those same kind of guys coming back this year. And they got guys to fill those roles, just as we have guys to fill the roles of people we lost.
You mentioned a two-quarterback system. Is that a possibility that you think consciously, or how much do you?
Well, I think about it a lot, particularly because of my relationship with Bill Lazor. I remember going way back to, let me see, what year was that? 2001, maybe, potentially. We were at Cornell University together, and Ricky Ronnie was our starting quarterback. And we were able to use a guy named, Keith Ferguson came in. He was able to go out there and run some of our Wildcat stuff. He can throw the ball a little bit. And I know Bill Lazor well, and I'm sure he's getting those guys ready to do some of those type of things that he did way back at Cornell. We did a great job of winning a bunch of games in the Ivy League together. So I'm sure he's got a little bit of the head coach's ear right now, trying to get those things in. And, seeing what San Fran's doing with their two guys, historically what New Orleans has been able to do with two guys at times, it's definitely something that the league is going to. And it wouldn't shock me one bit if that's one of their plans. If it's not, so be it. We'll have to deal with, with our guy, the rifle.
So what's the challenge there? Because obviously Jesse Fields is an incredible athlete.
There's no doubt about it. The great part about this place is you got some really good athletes here. You got some incredible athletes on the edge, in Leonard Floyd, and Justin Hollins, and all those kind of guys that are going to be out there on our edge. We got some incredible athletes inside with 99 in particular, and some of the guys that can chase down these guys. The old saying with some of those type of read type things that he can do, potentially being a throw it option as well. If you can't block them, read them. And we know those guys can use those type of techniques to do some of the things against us, to get the ball out of his hands quickly, to be efficient, to be effective. And they're always going to have a plan for 99, so you got to be ready for all those things.
I think Leonard, you guys correct me if I'm forgetting what the comparison you used, but I think he compared defending, especially running quarterbacks, as him being a fox and them being a chicken or a rabbit or something. What have you seen from him in terms of his enthusiasm for taking on such a responsibility, and how did you sort of get that sense from him when not only the Rams extended him in the spring, but that being one of the big reasons in this division?
We talked about this, from the beginning with Leonard. Like when he came in, since I've been here, he's been all business. He came back with the ability not to say, "I've made it because I got a new contract." Just that I want to give it all to this organization, to his head coach, to his teammates more importantly, and how much he cares about those guys and gives them to those guys, and now to his coaches. And watching him go out and play and practice every single day is just exciting. So to watch him go out and to make that transition from the new guy last year to the guy that has his role and the guy that's really comfortable in his role is really fun to watch for me.
I know it's your first year working with Aaron Donald, but no doubt you've been watching him for years. What do you see from him now going into his 30-year-old season that might be different than when he was younger?
Just make sure you wrote that you called him 30 and not me. He's the best-looking 30-year-old I've ever seen in my life. But he's just one of those guys, man. He's a true professional. His intent every day at work is what you see. The way he goes about his business-like attitude is what you see. His ability to get on the field and absolutely affect every single play is what you see. And again, fortunate or not, I was one of those guys that had to try to block him on an offense standpoint. And I know the woes that creates for an offense and the preparation that it puts into, and then he creates all types of problems for people. And he also opens up doorways for other people. So with all that being said, man, I'm just fortunate enough to be coaching the best player in the world. And I'm excited to see him go out there and play this week.
What kind of counsel, if any, do you give young players like Bobby Brown, Ernest Jones that are going to be playing?
It was funny. I just got finished doing a little counseling myself this week. When you talk to those young players that you're going to be counting on at some point, you want to get those guys a routine. And you want to get those guys in position to go out and put themselves in a routine this week and what it looks like for the season and how they're going to moving forward. And I told those guys, ask some of these veterans on our teams, like a Fuller, who's went through it just last year, what would you tell your rookie self? And how can I use that and go back and use that right now to help me? Go ask a Taylor Rapp. What would you tell your rookie self right now if I was Ernest or if I was a Bobby Brown or some of those type of guys, and get that information from them and use it from them? Because usually when you're in those moments and you got those moods, Usually you can get some pretty good information from those type of guys. Even if you ask some of the older veterans, they probably can tell you something about how they would handle a situation differently, how to utilize all of this time, just football, how to utilize all of your time when it's invested into a walkthrough, right into the classroom, right from a classroom to practice. How do I take it from practice to watching tape of my own? How do I take from watching tape of my own to then watching it again with my coaches, taking the collective criticism across the board and using it? How do I go about that process every single day and remain focused so I don't hit that rookie wall? So, it's funny you happen to mention that. I was just walking off the field, talking to Ernest himself, and just said, hey, man, you got to find out what your routine looks like. Get yourself really comfortable in that routine and let your role grow.
Kind of a 5-for-1 question, but with your starting secondary, can you kind of go through each of those guys and just kind of describe what you've learned about them and what they bring to that secondary?
Jalen, we'll start right there with him, man. He's just extremely smart, extremely talented. And right now he's shown me nothing but how hard he practices and how hard he's willing to go for his teammates and all the things that he's been able to do since I've been here. Just a wonderful player to be around, a wonderful guy to work with, a wonderful guy to coach. He's with you when you're right, and if he has an opinion of his own, he'll say it. If he has a problem, he comes to my office, which I love. He goes to the people that can fix the problem instead of talking to people that can't. Those are the things I love about Jalen. Those are the things that I watch him grow with just being here from the short amount of time that I have been. You talk about D. Will, you're talking about an over-analytical guy who really dives deep into movement. He really dives deep into other people's skill sets. He really dives deep into what we're doing and how it's going to affect him in his game moving forward. So you want to be able to talk to him in an over-analytical way to give him a space to think about how he's going to play it, then have a little bit of leniency to fall back to say, hey, here's why we're doing it together. And I love that about him. It's the beauty of learning how to work with different people, treat people all with respect, but not the same. And it's a great deal. The D-Lo, when you talk about David Long, you're talking about a guy that's putting in so much work into his craft and what he wants to be and how he wants to grow. And he's definitely putting a lot of investment into one of his really good buddies in D. Will. And you see those two constantly talking about how they want to play, how they want to move, how they want to do things. And they able to articulate that very well. So it's very fun to be around those three corners when you're talking about a starting standpoint from your sub packages and those guys getting out there and playing at a high level. Fuller, talking about the safeties. You're talking about a guy well above his years, been voted captain. You're talking about one of those serious guys that's got our green dot, that's going out there and absolutely leading our group at a high level. And that's so much fun to be around. You're talking about a young man who is well beyond his years when it comes to football maturity, well beyond his years when it comes to life maturity. He's probably more mature than me when it comes to that. He's awesome. And then you talk about Taylor Rapp. You're talking about a violent football player who cannot wait to show his violence. You're talking about a very easily ticked off human. You're talking about a very sawed off, ready to go and go out there and create that play for us from a splash play, make a difference play type of mentality that he gets really excited about that in those moments, and I can't wait to see him go out and play. He's one of the fun guys to tease because he doesn't know whether he's going to come over there and punch you or he's going to go out there and execute something really well for you. And I love that about him, and I love that mentality that he brings to work every single day.
What takes him off?
Anything. Anything where he think it may not be his fault or it may not be right or it may not be exactly perfect. Some of those things that can get him going. But he's learned how to control some of those things better. And he's also learned how to deal with those things when they don't go particularly the way he thinks they should go. He's awesome.
Coach, how do you sort of manage all the different personalities?
That's kind of our job. Manage really good football players and get them to go out there and play really well together. How do you do that? The $1 million question. I'm going to keep that to myself so I can remain a really good coach. I'm just kidding.
And what about that position opposite of Leonard Floyd? What are you seeing from those guys?
Man, really excited what Holland's been giving us. You're talking about a guy that's really cerebral in his start, a guy that can move in multiple positions. His position flexibility is what makes him really special, in my opinion. And then you're talking about the guys behind him. When you're talking about the Justin Lawlers this week having an opportunity potentially, you're talking about the T. Lou's of the world coming off an injury, being able to fight back, being able to show something in the preseason, being able to show up in a couple practices here at the end, how excited he's attacked the football field. Really excited when you're talking about that group. Fortunately, Chris is out, but he was really coming along really well as a young guy. One of those guys that Leonard Floyd kind of grabbed and brought it along, and you really start to see it show in the preseason. You're really excited about that. Unfortunately, he'll be out. But it is what it is. We'll see where we go from there, but I'm really excited about that group as a whole.
All set?
You guys are easy, man. I'll see you guys later.